What's going on, everybody? It's Jamie,
And John,
and welcome to the A-To-Zed Reseller podcast. How's it going this week, John?
good man. It's been a little bit of a crazy week, a whirlwind of a week, but overall things have been pretty good. The weather's getting nicer, which is good. You know, I've been able to get outside in some shorts and t-shirt a couple of times and get some outdoor work done. So that's always good for the psyche.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've had a pretty busy week too. I haven't done anything outside as I'm still trying to declutter my disaster of a home. I really thought that the end result of starting the antique booth would help me declutter a lot of the things I've been collecting, but I just keep getting more and more stuff. So I'm like my own worst enemy. But I do have to sometime here soon. I do have to sit down and manage the mess that I have, because I do know, like you said, with the nice weather, we're so close to garage sale season. This past weekend, I know there were a couple in my area. I wasn't home all weekend, so I didn't get a chance to go out. But there was a great, really big indoor one, and then I had heard somebody say there was a couple local ones in the town next to me, but they weren't very good. So I don't feel like I missed out, or at least they told me they weren't very good. They could have,
Right.
that could be, telling me a little lie to keep me away. But yeah,
Hmm.
it'd be nice to see the weather change here. It'll definitely be, I think it just puts people in a better mood when you can get outside anyway.
Yeah, for sure. And then, making sure that you have the cash, which is something, I've seen in a recent one of your videos chatting about, and making sure you've got the space for everything, because you just never know with yard sales. It could be anything. You could walk out and find absolutely nothing, or you could stumble upon just this epic huge haul, and you never really know. That's the fun of yard sales. You have no idea.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. And then, yeah, like in my last video, that it seems to be more and more I'm just getting introduced to people and walking into different situations where I get offered more bulk buys. And I mean, I'm kind of loving it, but I don't really have the space for it. So I do have to figure out something for space. I know you do a storage unit, right? Like you just have a storage unit.
Yeah. I've actually got one like pretty much down across the road from me. It's sweet. I can see the building from my back deck, and it's nice to have it that close by. But I did just have a really small one. It was like 5 by 11, just a tiny thing. I had just enough room to put two shelves, and me, a pretty small guy, to squeeze down the middle and like get to what I need. But I quickly outgrew that one. Now I do have I think it's 15 by 11. So it's a pretty decent size. There's enough room in there. I think I got like probably 70 banker boxes of clothes, and 12 big totes and some other shelves and stuff. So there's still room, but man, I'll tell you, it doesn't take long before it starts feeling a little bit crowded. So
Yeah,
luckily it is pretty cheap, and it is really local to me as well. So because this is like an old church that this old guy owns. He's probably like close to 80 years old. So, I mean, obviously, any money he's making off of it at this point is just gravy. So, I did tell him if another unit comes up, like, let me know. I might be interested. So, I'd have 3 from him at that point. But
wow. Yeah, that's that's sort of my dilemma. Is it's rent or buy. I'm either gonna buy something or rent something. I could use some storage in the basement at our spa as well, but I just feel like at that point, I just feel I don't want to be in and out of there all the time while they're working and stuff too. Like just I don't know. So yeah, that is space is something that I'm gonna have to deal with here. But that is nice that it's so close to you. I have so many. I'm on a big like property
yeah,
with outbuildings, but a lot of the outbuildings either leak or have other people's stuff in them already. And I don't really want stuff I have listed online in buildings that might have other people's stuff, and they might, somebody might come in and grab it. If it, there's definitely on our property, it's a farm, and there's a lot of people coming and going, and yeah,
yeah,
I wouldn't feel good about leaving it in certain buildings. Not that anybody would purposely take anything here, obviously, but if it's just in a bin and they didn't know what they were looking at, they might be, hey, this is cool, this baseball mitt or this whatever it happens to be, grab it, and before you know
yeah.
it, you go to look for it and it's gone. So yeah. But I think this week one of the things we were going to talk about was buyer's experience on eBay. It's obviously, I think we've talked about it prior on maybe one of the podcasts on my channel when we started, but it is something eBay's sort of done to basically change the way that they're working through feedback. So I know talking to reps and stuff, they had basically said that feedback was never really intended to be, a good or bad mark on the person, like you as a seller, it was just so supposed to be so that people could kind of see the interaction between the two people. But the way that they're doing it now is so messy. And I've definitely ran into some problems where I've had, feedback left, and some of it, like on my eBay currently, I do have 2 negative feedbacks, which I deserve for sure. There are 2 things that I could have did better, and I'll own up to them. I've had some removed recently that I had to work pretty hard towards, but I just don't like, and I find it more and more that eBay just goes to that saying now where it's, oh, it's just buyer experience, it doesn't affect you. It's like, but I know on my latest one, a lot of it was just, it wasn't so much about how it went down. It was just like, why is this allowed to be posted with lies? Like one of the things for sure that was not true about it, and eBay did not care about, was they said, oh, I don't want to return it because of international shipping. Well, we were both in Canada.
Right.
There's no internet. Shipping is expensive. I can agree with that part. Maybe you don't want to return because it's expensive. But that's not what you say. The other thing, it was like, this person also said that this was a video game, and they also said it was the most disgusting, damaged, gross, gunky thing they ever seen in their life. I actually sent 2 different eBay reps a video of me pulling the item in question in a video and said, hey, like this, you can see in the video that maybe somewhere there might be scuffs and stuff, but you can see it's not this disgusting.
Yeah.
It was not what the person was saying, right? So
Yeah, you didn't just pull it out of one of your outbuildings.
yeah, no, for sure.
Right.
They made it sound like it was pulled directly out of the trash. Yeah, it was a weird one. That particular one was weird too, because the person didn't even bother reaching out to me. They just left negative feedback and kind of painted this picture. And then I did message them and they didn't respond. So then I responded to the feedback. I actually reported them on eBay for, like basically like slander and whatever. Like you can report somebody for not being, appropriate or doing proper business on eBay. And then finally they did wind up, I don't know what caught their attention, but finally they said, hey, and then we had a conversation. It worked out fine. But I definitely spoke to quite a few, I think 3 different eBay reps that went nowhere, which was kind of unfortunate, because a lot of times I find eBay for business, or sorry, is it eBay for business on Facebook? It's a little easier to talk to an agent there than directly on eBay. But even there, they sort of just summed it up to buyer's experience, which I'm not a big fan of personally.
I think it's absolutely ridiculous. It's the same as the, and I hate to use this term, and I don't mean it in a derogatory way, but like, we've all heard of the boomer mentality that customer's always right. That's such a 1950s way of thinking. The customer is not always right. That's how you breed a sense of entitlement within a capitalist system. Like that's why we have so much, just, you can't go to a store without seeing a retail person being abused, because we've somehow ingrained it in our society that the customer is always right. And that means I can treat you like garbage and lie and do all of these things so that I can get something for free. And for eBay to actually be catering to that and making a part of their feedback system, to me, is complete nonsense. And while I love eBay as a whole, and it's where I make a bunch of money, this is one of those things where it's like, this is absolute BS. So I won't sugarcoat it at all. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. And it's mostly because, like you said, there's almost no recourse for anybody who just goes on there and makes up whatever they want to make up. They can just go on there. They don't have to contact you first. They don't have to do anything. Their experience could be, I'm going to write a story about Jamie and how he sent me this piece of literal trash, and eBay will side with me because that's my experience. It doesn't matter if it's true or not.
Right.
And it's just, that's ridiculous. I don't think you should be able to leave feedback for anybody until a message has been sent first. Like, there shouldn't even be an option to leave feedback unless there's first been communication with your buyer or seller.
Right.
That needs to be a prerequisite. That, that way, if you're at least forcing some opportunity for resolution before you can leave feedback, you eliminate probably 90% of it, because 90% of this is probably just like crappy people who just don't care, right?
Yep.
So cut that out, and what's left might occasionally be something that isn't really warranted, but it won't have as much of an impact. It won't have as much of a, I mean, if you're a newer seller and you get a couple of negatives, I mean, your feedback could be like an 80%. That's going to be a huge red flag for buyers, and it might not even be your fault. So it does impact the seller. And eBay can say whatever they want. They can use whatever cookie cutter response they want, read from whatever script they want when you contact them about it, but it isn't right at all.
No, I do agree with what you said, though. There should be some sort of steps in place for feedback to be left, right? Like you should have to be able to contact the person. There has to be a point where there was no resolution, and then you could leave feedback, because a lot of times in this case, it really wasn't like I don't think they were trying to extort me. I think they were truly unhappy for whatever reason. And then when we did wind up talking, it wound up being okay. Obviously, with eBay or with most places, money makes people happy. Hey, I'll give you a partial refund. You can get a new case. I wish you would have reached out to me. And then they actually revised. I said, you can leave your opinion the same, but if you would even change it to a neutral, I would be very happy with that. I'm like more than happy to work with you, but like we have to come to some sort of, resolution here. And so, it took a little bit of money, a partial refund. And, they wound up actually leaving me positive feedback that said, hey, this person went above and beyond. I wish I would have, they basically kind of backtracked totally. So yeah, it's
and that is a more accurate representation of that buyer's experience, right?
Yep.
So when eBay claims buyer experience and they can just do whatever, like that isn't actually accurate, because
Right.
if you have that communication first and you are reasonable human beings with one another, then you get an actual accurate representation of how the buyer experience was.
Sure, and we can't rate sellers. So where's seller experience? Or sorry, we can't rate buyers, is what I meant to say.
Yeah.
Where's seller's experience? I think if you want people to want to sell on your platform, you should be making both, buyers and sellers happy. And they really should, much like Poshmark, I think, be the middleman who basically figures out what actually happens there, right? There might be some conflict, but they don't do a very good job on eBay of actually helping you solve that conflict. They just go by their set rules, and they're very easy to manipulate, and people know how to, and that's sort of how it plays out a lot of times.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, I worked in a call center for a few years back in the day for various companies, and I know what it's like. I know what the rules are. Here's your script.
Yeah.
Here are the cases where you might be able to escalate it off to the next tier of support team. And if it does not meet that criteria, don't waste our time. Yeah. And I feel like, my seller experience with eBay is that is how the situation is set up, especially with the chat and whatnot, when you're obviously being outsourced to people who are just reading from the script. I mean, that's fine. Like it's nothing against these individuals at all, but it's really, really poor customer service from eBay when their customers are both buyers and sellers. Like, I would argue to say that sellers like you and I are more eBay's customer than the actual buyers are, because we're the ones that are actually generating those sales. Yes, you need buyers to buy things, but if there's nothing for sale, the platform doesn't exist.
Right.
So for eBay to put this all off as buyer experience without even considering who their customer really is, I think it's just really short-sighted, and something that someone probably just made up one morning and was like, hey, it'd be really cool. Let's do this. And somehow that person still has a job at eBay. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sugarcoating it at all. I think it's terrible.
Yeah, it is. Before we get into the next topic, I did want to add too, and I'm just interested in anybody who's went through either got negative feedback or had something removed. The one thing that really irks me about it too is, and there's no proof of this, like I can't document somewhere where it actually says this is the case, but as soon as you get a negative feedback, even if you get it removed, there's probably about 3 or 4 days where there's almost like no sales, Nothing happens on your account. It's like crickets. It was actually about 2 days before I even noticed there was a problem. And I kind of went back to try to figure out, oh, I need to do something to create sales. And I'm sure that negative feedback just totally killed everything happening on my eBay store, because I was still making sales in other platforms and there was no issues there. Actually running sales, so I expected maybe higher sales. But yeah, I think it totally kills the algorithm for you, and it takes a little while to ramp back up again.
100%. I believe that 100%. eBay uses things like AI to, cycle through and review your listings and make sure you're not selling anything that you're not supposed to. I've had a pair of pants that are like supposed to be insect repellent pants, because I don't know, they contain some material insects don't like or something. And that listing has been removed 3 times by AI because it thinks that I'm selling a pesticide and I need an EPA number. And it's like, no, these are pants. Like, come on. So, yeah, 100%. Like, think about it almost like a credit score as well. If you do something dumb or you miss a payment or you go over a limit or something happens that you get a ding on your credit score, it takes a little bit for it to come back up. Some kind of a hard inquiry. And I liken this negative feedback thing to that same type of a deal where it's like something dings that score and you're going to have an unfavorable dip until it levels back off again. 100%. I believe it. I know there's probably no actual scientific data to back it up, but I bet if you polled eBay sellers and you got like a good solid poll of like 1,000 of them, I'm willing to bet the vast majority would agree with that.
Yeah, I really think so. It is kind of a nuisance, obviously, but it's something you have to deal with, and you find new ways. But I think this next topic is something that might be interesting to people who watch this channel anyway. Canada versus the US, and that's mostly, I'm going to say, we're probably going to talk about eBay. But obviously the one thing that comes to your mind instantly is shipping, right? Like, shipping is just something it holds Canadian sellers back. The other thing I find is the .ca versus .com, and the more people I've talked to about this, I think when you sell on .com, it also confuses US buyers, because I get all kinds of questions still, because I mostly sell on .ca. I do have a .com as well, but I think a lot of times they think that they're offering money in US dollars, because I'll ask, well, how much is that going to be in actual US dollars? I'm like, well, I don't know. Well, I can't see what it says on your screen, first of all, but this is how much it is Canadian. And sometimes I'll go and actually calculate how much it might be, but shipping for sure, though, like I said, I think is probably the hugest thing when we're talking about Canada versus the US.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because so I only sell on ebay.ca, and I'll be honest, man, I think that volume wise, I probably sell 2/3 of all my stuff to US buyers versus Canadian buyers. And I think that it is because of the shipping cost. It's interesting because I can ship things tracked to the US anywhere in the US cheaper than I can ship anything tracked to 2 towns away from it here in Nova Scotia. So it's like, and it is only because of the new discounted rates that eBay and Canada Post have negotiated. So tracked packet is a lot cheaper than it was when I was first starting out selling, a couple years ago, for sure. But, I think there's a couple of things that go on as Canadian sellers. So I'll talk about those because it's something that I've been asked a lot. A lot of people are really scared about shipping to the US because how do you deal with customs? Oh my God, they want HS, they want tariff code numbers and all this stuff. It's like, what do I do? What if something goes wrong? Is it through Canada Post? Is it through USPS? Like, who do I contact? People are just generally scared to ship to the US. So I think my biggest little nugget for that would be, don't even worry about it at all, because I have never had an issue except for one time where, for whatever reason, USPS delivered something to California when it was very clearly supposed to go to Florida. I put the claim through Canada Post, and it is what it is. They do the rest. There's literally no difference at all. You purchase your shipping label, you print it out. The only difference you have to do is you have to sign it and date it. and somewhere along the line it will ask you for that HS code or tariff code or whatever, which, yeah, they can be a little bit annoying to look up, but I mean, a quick Google search will probably find you the HS code for clothing, for example, or video games or something, whatever it is. And then I just leave a note on my phone so I know what they are at all times. It's like, oh, here's something I haven't shipped in a while. What's the code for that? Oh yeah, copy paste. I'm good to go. And then yeah, I do occasionally get those questions from US buyers who are like, well, I thought I was off. I thought this was only supposed to be $17. Like, that's what I saw. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I see $23 because that's what I'm selling it in Canadian. Maybe you're seeing 17 US, but now you're seeing 23, but it's actually Canadian. Like, there is an exchange rate. Like, you know, it's about $1.35 right now. So it's just, yeah, that works out. And I think most people, once you explain that to them, like, oh, okay, yeah, cool. I didn't realize you were in Canada, and it's all good.
Yeah. Yeah, I forgot about the tariff thing. I haven't had to deal with any of that in a long time, just because, well, because of cross-border shipping, I'm using USPS labels for the most part. The odd time I still will, if I have something I need to get out or would like to get out quicker, I will just buy the label directly through eBay so I can take it to Canada Post, and maybe I don't have to wait 4 days to go drop it off on my regular Stallion drop-off. But yeah, I thought that was automatically generated by eBay. It doesn't do that anymore?
No, actually, well, it's interesting because I don't know how it works on the you know, like on the actual like desktop website. I literally don't use it. I do everything from my phone, and up until about 6 months ago, it never even asked for this code. It never came up. It was nowhere on the app. And then about 6 months ago, I updated my phone, updated the app, and all of a sudden it was asking for it. And I'm like, oh crap, I have no idea. So I had to look it up. And yeah, now it's just like when you go in, like you always had to go in and just confirm the item, like in a customs forms section on the app. But now it just asks for the HS code. There's just a field for that you have to fill out. Yeah, maybe it does automatically pull those on the actual like desktop site, but
yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, like that. Like I said, if it was only within the last 6 months, I definitely probably haven't used it that many times that it would have been an issue. But yeah, I mean, that does make sense, right? And Canada and the US. The other thing. So we talked about shipping.
Mhm.
Talked about potentially a price difference when somebody's having a look at it. The other thing would be brands. So like there are certain brands that you can only get in Canada or that you can only get in the US. And I see a lot of people, you know, buying those things online, because if you can't buy it locally, you could, you know, it could be something very simple. I can't think of a good example off the top of my head, but actually I can remember the guy at Stallion around Christmas time had said that like people were shipping out like boxes of Pringles because they were these exclusive flavors that you couldn't get in the States that we only had here. And he said, I think there was some issue there because I don't know that food is something, not all food you can ship. It really depends, right?
Yeah.
There's some issues with things like that, but it is items like that people are interested in and will pay like crazy amounts of money. I remember my buddy Captain Flip Flops on Instagram. He was making a killing selling special limited edition monsters and some other energy drink that was only limited edition to Canada or was discontinued in the US. So things like that, you can really sort of take advantage of the cross-border, you know, connection there too.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a good point. I've been able to take advantage of that both ways. So, and I haven't done this, but I know a friend of mine, like quite a few years ago now, you might remember these. I think it was Lay's special flavor. It was Quebec 4 cheese chips.
Yeah.
And like, oh my God, they were just too good. But anyway, a buddy of mine who was selling on eBay way back in the day was selling them to US people. And he was just like, he would go to the store, pay the $2.50 or whatever it was for a bag of chips at the time. And no word of a lie, he was selling these for like $20 a bag. It was just unreal because they were limited edition, but also you're not getting Quebec 4 cheese chips down in California.
Nope.
But if you love Quebec 4 cheese chips, you're going to pay somebody to send them to you. And so that's another example of that. But even for me, like last year, I went to see the new Ninja Turtles movie, that like Mutant Melee or whatever it was. the Seth Rogen version of the film, and that was pretty good. But one of the things that was exclusive to Canada, at Cineplex in Canada, was like the little cups and cup toppers. They had similar ones in the US, but these ones were specific to Cineplex in Canada. And so like we got our tickets and got our meals and stuff, and then I think we went to watch movies a second time, and I also got the Ninja Turtles one there. So I think altogether I might have been in, just for these cups and cup toppers, I might have been in somewhere around like $20, and I sold the set of 4 to somebody in Florida for $120. So collectibles like that are exclusive cinema releases, or even like exclusive Walmart releases, only a certain area. I mean, it's risky because you never know what's going to be on trend for more than a week or two. But if you get in early enough, there can be some good money. And then on the flip side of that, most of the clothing that I buy to sell, the company or the chain that I buy from, they get all of their inventory in from like the Boston area, like New England area. So there are a lot of brands and stuff that, while they might be available in Canada, they're not nearly as abundant. So I'm thinking things like Macy's, for example. Like there's certain brands, I don't know if there's a Macy's in Canada, but there sure isn't one, near me.
Yeah.
But like things like J. Crew isn't like a huge seller, but like Torrid is a really good women's brand, like plus size clothing brand. And I think you can get it in some places in Canada, but it's not nearly as abundant. So like J. Jill and Torrid and stuff like that, women's clothes, I mean, these are just pouring in. I have almost an unlimited inventory of them. And then I sell a lot of that here in Canada on Poshmark because, Canadian buyers just don't really have it anywhere else unless they want to go to the store and buy it new for, way more than you're going to get it here. But yeah, so it's interesting. And it's a good way to kind of work the system to, sell to a certain customer base.
Yeah, it is. And like I said, if you can stay on top of those trends, it can be lucrative. And then also, like you said, if you are on the wrong side of it, you could wind up with a whole bunch of stuff that you don't know what to do with. But
yeah, you could have 5 cases of Quebec 4 cheese chips.
yeah, I'm sure they would eventually all dissipate. But yeah. So did you have you had a pretty good sales week? Did you have a particular sale of the week?
I did have a pretty good sales week and a particular sale. Now, in fairness, this wasn't necessarily a great reselling week, technically, but I did have a good sales week because I sold a couple of items out of my own personal video game collection. I sold a couple of N64s, some of the special, like fantastic clear ones that came out, special editions. So I had the smoke gray one and the watermelon red, and I sold those together to somebody. Actually, I've gotten a couple messages this afternoon. He received them today. And, test them out. Very happy with them. I think I had them listed for somewhere around like 600 combined, but I was going to the same seller. Made the sale for $525. I'm calling that basically a zero buy cost because while I did spend money on these items, like, a few years ago, it was all money that I had made from like extra, like either reselling or like flipping other things so I could get money to buy them for my collection. So, but even if I did spend, a couple $100 on them or something 5 years ago, it's, that money's gone now. So yeah, it was a good week overall. But $525 worth of N64s. And then I did also have a couple of expansion packs that I sold for $65 a piece as well. So yeah, clearing out some space, making some room on my shelves, and not collecting dust on a couple of cool things that someone else can enjoy, and made a few $100s to boot.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I like to think of it the same, similar to you. I think if I was going to sell off stuff out of my personal collection, I don't necessarily care what I paid for it. If I'm done with it, it's worth what it's worth. Plus, I've got to enjoy it for X amount of years. Or if it's a short-term thing where I just bought something to maybe use and then flip, or maybe make it not so expensive for myself. I know I bought one time this grommet machine. I didn't really need it, but I'm like, you know what? It'd be cheaper for me to buy it, use it myself, and then I sold it, and I wound up losing $15. But I would have lost a lot more money if I just kept the thing, because I would have sat there and I still have never needed it again, right? So sometimes that's a good way to look at things. things, you could sell it as new open box. But yeah, something you've had for a long time, like those consoles, you got to like use them, enjoy them, display them, and
Yeah.
now you get to enjoy some money back so you can do something else with it. It's pretty awesome, really.
Yeah, it is. No, and I mean that's that's why like when I talk about my video game collecting and all that kind of stuff, it's like that's all. I don't want to say like video games are a smart investment or anything like that. Yeah, I know there's some people who buy and sell video games for a living, or they collect video games thinking like, okay, well, I'll be rich later. And yeah, you know what? They're usually going to appreciate in value, but I'm not holding them like a stock or whatever. But at the same time, I feel like it was a pretty safe investment as far as a collection goes, because then if I do need some extra cash, guaranteed going to be able to move them pretty quick.
Yeah, for sure. Easy to liquidate.
Exactly.
Yeah. For me, I had a slower sales week on eBay. Other platforms did well. Facebook Marketplace did really well. I actually sold a bunch of shoes from my last video on my channel locally for decent money. But I'm still going to go with an eBay sale because I just sold a pair of Kohans from that buy from the big shoe / swimsuit buy that I did there on my last video. And I think 65 bucks for the Kohans. They typically sell for more money. I just put them at that price thinking that I could move them out quicker. So it's not even that it's a really big sale. It's just like the start to what I hope is a flood of a whole bunch of these $10 shoes flipping for about $65, which is the goal when you're buying a big lot of stuff, is you hope to flip it quickly. I've already came pretty close with just the marketplace sales to recouping my initial money they put into it.
Nice.
Yeah, and I mean, on a side note, I've sold one bathing suit for $30, which I think is pretty good considering I had somebody leave a message on the video saying like they thought that those were available last year at Costco for like 25 or 30 bucks. So, but still, I mean, I think a brand new bathing suit still.
You know what though? I got to jump in because even if they were available at Costco last year for $25, that's last year for $25. That has nothing to do with right now in current market conditions.
Oh.
Guess what? Those are $30 bathing suits, and you know that you just sold one for $30.
Oh yeah. I know that sort of. I mean, somewhat relieving. Anytime that you take a chance on a whole bunch of inventory and you see something move out of it, it's definitely relieving. It's like, okay, so I know what I'm doing. Thank goodness. Because even though you look at comps and you can kind of predict and forecast, yeah, these will sell over maybe the next month or two. And, in the next month, I can see that money back. But until those things actually happen, you're just sitting there waiting like everybody else that has listed something online.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's nice to have that validation, number one, that you made a good buy, but then also to recoup that money so that, maybe you get another opportunity just like that a week from now and you can do it again. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully if I go back and see that guy, he's willing to deal like he was that day. I mean, I think I talked about it a little bit in the video. The truth of the story is when I walked in, he said he wanted to buy, I don't know if I said this in the video or not. He had an opportunity to buy this entire pawn shop out for $4,000, but he needed the money like yesterday. And I kind of said to him, like, I don't have $4,000, but said, if you want to make me some really good deals, we might be closer to 1,000. And, I spent like $700 or almost $800. So I didn't even get to the 1,000 with the stuff he had in the store, but he was willing to make me really good deals that I didn't want to turn down. So it's kind of nice. Hopefully that opportunity can come up again, but maybe won't be desperate for cash. So maybe the deals won't be so good.
Yeah. But you know what, maybe even if the deals won't be as good, maybe you'll still get some preferential, pricing, just from kind of helping him out in that situation. You never know. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. His store is interesting because that guy is geared to, so in my particular area, it is very agriculture rich. And being so, a lot of the people who live in this area don't want to work in picking apples, and they don't want to maybe work in tobacco. Still is a thing that's pretty predominant in this area. And they bring in offshore workers from usually Mexico, Jamaica. I know there are people who come in from Vietnam but that is for like more ginseng type stuff in this area. But when those guys come, they come to work, but they also come and buy huge amounts of things to take back with them, which is why I think this guy has so much like Costco and maybe Target type liquidation stuff. And that's the kind of stuff these people want to bring back home with them. And they're probably reselling it or giving it to family members and whatever. But some of the stuff that maybe would be like the Timberlands and the Skechers and those type of shoes and the Adidas that are more money, those guys don't really want to pay up for those items because they're looking at sort of more budget friendly value stuff to bring home. So I think when I talked to him, he was sort of like, like if you want shoes like this, I could be your hookup. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I hope those are true words because I'd love to come back there and buy shoes like this on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So
that's
that worked
awesome.
it worked out pretty awesome for sure. I do think the last topic, we could probably talk forever about this, but we'll try to condense it into like a bite-sized chunk here. Basically the secrets of making money online. And that's sort of almost like what all these reselling channels, just like the one that you see John and myself have here on YouTube. That's what it is, right? It's like, like a magician giving the secrets away. That's sometimes how it feels like. And sometimes it's painted. And there's lots of people who don't like the fact that we do this sort of thing on YouTube and tell people, hey, you can make money selling all these things. And this is how you sort of steer away from problems. But if you had to give a couple of your secrets away, what would be your number one, number two, maybe?
All right. Yeah, sure. Well, first, I'm always of the mindset that there's enough pie for everyone, right? So I'm never going to be like, I can't help you out because you're my competition. Honestly, if I was like, would I hold seminars in my own neighborhood to teach the other 50 people in my neighborhood who want to resell and be my competition? Would I tell them all my secrets? Maybe not, but they're not watching this video. So yeah, there's definitely enough for everybody. The number one thing that, and I've got a good example of this as well, so I'll back it up with something, but the number one thing for me, and especially just knowing what I'm dealing in, which is mostly clothing, and my average buy cost is around $6. So like I'm selling a lot of items in that $20 to $30 range and not making huge money, but a lot of bread and butter items are moving that are helping to feed buying those better items, right? So for me, it's not like holding on to my inventory. It's not getting attached to my inventory. It's not thinking to myself, I can't sell this for 20 because it's worth 30. The reality is I paid $6 for it. So if I make $5 off that, or if I make $15 off that, or I make $25 off that, it's all a win. So obviously I don't like lowball offers. I mean, I don't think anybody does. So I'm not saying, oh, you got to accept lowball offers. And if something's worth $100, take 30 for it because you made some money. That's not it. But for me, like on Poshmark the other day, somebody made a bundle of 10 shirts, like 10 women's shirts, most of them in that $20 to $30 range. A couple were a little bit higher. A couple were, maybe listed at 25, but have had them for a while. So I'm going to say they all averaged out to about like $22, $23 value, we'll say. Well, if somebody's making a bundle of 10 items on Poshmark, I'm definitely willing to negotiate because I know that I'm going to make some money no matter what, right? So I think that it worked out that it was somewhere in the like $230 range or $240 range is what it all totaled up to. My 20% discount that comes off automatically when you make a bundle with me through Poshmark, brought it down to maybe just over 2 or maybe just under 200 or something like that. And you know what? I really wanted to sell a bundle of 10. So I sent a pretty aggressive offer, $150. And yeah, so that's selling everything for just $15 a piece. Some of those items were listed for over $30. What am I doing? Am I crazy? Well, no. I mean, it's like I made the sale and I'm still making like 50 or $60 total profit. And I just moved 10 items. I've made somebody very happy, I'm sure. They're very likely to come back and be like, oh man, I'm going to save this guy because he's willing to make deals. So again, it's kind of like that guy who hooked you up with some good pricing and maybe will sell you those shoes, later on at some good pricing. Well, I've got an opportunity to also be that kind of guy. And yeah, sure, I could have held out, sold each of those 10 items, maybe made $100 profit instead of the 50 or 60. But like, don't get attached to your items. Don't get attached to your inventory. Don't take them personally. I calculate every situation on its own merits. Was it worth selling those 10 items together like that in that bundle? Absolutely. If somebody offered me $15 on any of those items individually, I would have laughed and been like, no, that's stupid. That's way too low of an offer. But it's all relative, right? So anyway, that was a really long-winded number one. While I think of a number two, why don't you tell me what you think for one?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that was a good answer anyway. Like before I give mine, I'm just gonna say I know I'm listening to you and I agree I agree with you. And I just had somebody offer me a couple weeks ago 10 hats, and 2 of the hats were like $60+ so there's $120 in hats there, and they wanted, I think, about 10 hats total, but they wanted to pay $160 for everything, so they wanted everything else for free. We didn't wind up making a deal, and I felt kind of a little stupid after, because I think a lot of times I do think like you. I want to buy low, and I don't want to be greedy. I want to make money, but I don't need to like top dollar everything. And that's sometimes what happens. I kind of messed around and pulled the strings too long, and the person was like, you know what, never mind. I'm like, okay, so that's, that can be the other side of it. So, in retrospect, I probably should have just said, like, you know what, if I think of a value across the board for each hat, like you said, 15 a piece, I'm still making X amount of dollars, probably would have made more sense. But yeah, I do like that thought process, because I definitely don't really care about making the maximum amount of money always. It's just, buy low, sell reasonable is sort of my model a lot of times. But yeah, the number one thing I would say for me would be, it's a combination of two things, I guess. Don't buy things you like because you like them. You definitely need to check comps on absolutely everything. And whether you're an eBay seller, a Poshmark seller, you want to sell on Facebook Marketplace, Etsy, you name it, I would still go back to eBay, because it's the easiest place to look at what actually sold recently. If you use Terapeak, you can go back. Is it 6 months now? Is it a year? You can look back pretty far, but like realistically, the last 90 days, 60 days, even if you're not sure about it, like how fast it might sell, if you just look what sold in the last 30 days, that'll give you a pretty good idea of how much you're going to get for your item. And if you're not really sure what sell-through rate is, it's basically when you look something up, you can see how many are listed, and then you're going to go into your settings and go sold and complete of the same search, and it's going to show you how many were sold, or how many were sold and the listing was completed for that exact same item, so you can see how many actually sold. If you just find it's so hard when you talk about listings like that, because there are certain things that are unique that maybe that are worth a ton of money, and if you stumble across them, maybe you should just buy them on a whim. If you can get them cheap, you think, this might be worth a lot of money, that's fine. But when you're talking about basic inventory that you want to fill your store with, you really need to be looking at the sold comps. Otherwise, you're just going to have a whole bunch of stuff that you like that nobody else wants. And then when you do have to sell it for nothing, or next to nothing, or lose, or maybe even donate it back, it's a little bit eye-opening. And I think when you start out, I think that happens to everybody. You just start picking up stuff. I know we've talked before about picking up superhero shirts and maybe modern band shirts and things that we think are cool, but they're not going to sell for a good amount of money, especially if you're going to have to spend $5-6 in a thrift store picking it up, and you're going to have a hard time selling it for $10 online.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. I mean, buying stuff that you think is cool, oh, that's a trap, man. That's such a trap. And I did that. I mean, that's just a mistake. You learn as you go. And I did that all the time at the beginning, because I thought, man, everyone's going to want this. This is such a cool shirt. And then I realized that there's 10,000 of them listed, and sure, maybe 2,000 of them have sold when I checked that sell-through rate. Well, that's a 20% sell-through rate. So that means that, 8 others are just sitting there. Like 8 out of 10 are just sitting there and not selling. So you're either going to have to sell it super cheap so that you're showing up when people are, sorting by the lowest price, or man, yeah, probably just better not even to sell it at all. But yeah, sell-through rate is a big deal for, like you say, for those kind of everyday items, especially for clothing. Like some of the like women's stuff and whatever I sell isn't as much, but like some of the clothing items, like maybe if you're looking up a certain style of jeans, like Levi's 501s and a size 36, that's nice and specific. You can figure out, does this have a good enough sell-through rate that it's worth spending $7 on these, or is that really only worth it if I can get them for like say $2, because then I can be low enough that I can probably sell because I can price cheaper than everyone else. Something that goes along with that, and I think what I'll use for my number 2 here, is that you kind of have to be okay with making mistakes and learning as you go. So this doesn't necessarily make sales, but it kind of does, because learning from your mistakes and being okay with making them in the first place, but learning from those mistakes allows you to make better choices in the future. So now I will pretty much only pick up things that I know sell for a decent amount of money and in a certain amount of time frame, unless it's one of those unique items, which allows me to get like repeat buyers for similar things. Like I can kind of niche into certain things. So when you kind of have a niche, it's okay to like sell all kinds of different things. I mean, I sell all kinds of different things in my store, and I know you do too. But when you start building some knowledge about 1 or 2 or 3 categories, you can really focus on that and maybe just specialize in those items. And then all the other stuff, that's kind of extra. It's kind of fun to learn about all those other things as well. But yeah, number 2 is probably like a combination of allow yourself to make mistakes and learn from them. And then in doing so, gain some good knowledge in 2 or 3 categories that you can really feel like an expert on.
Yeah, I think that is important. And I think you won't even realize that's happening until it's happened when you're starting.
Exactly.
Yeah. You're like, oh, like you just know, and you can see that. I know a lot of times the places that I'm thrifting and looking for things, I don't always, I would say it's probably less than 20% when I look something up anymore. I'm basically figuring out similar items that I've sold because I'm picking up a lot of like items essentially, right? It's not until you start getting into like something that's more unique or maybe vintage, and you might need to just see if it sells or people are interested in it. But yeah, I think that's a good number 2 still.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of get used to you just hey, I never thought it would be women's clothes, but all of a sudden, one day I woke up and realized I know a lot about this. And so it just gets easier as you go. But you can't get discouraged and distracted early on. I mean, you have to allow yourself the grace of making mistakes and realize that it's okay. Things will get better. 2 years ago, man, I was selling like, if I made 5 sales in a week, I was pumped. I was like, sweet, I just made $100 this week or something. Like, that's awesome. And now to me, like, a lot of days I'm making 5 sales a day or something. And it's going to naturally grow. So, yeah, you just can't get discouraged.
Yeah. Now, I think my number 2, it might be just sort of maybe helpful information. So like if you're searching around and you can't really find things that are worth a lot of money, but you do see things with value, one of the things you can do is take items that are not worth maybe as much money and lot them up and make them worth a lot more money, right? You might not get the same value out of things, right? Like if we're talking about video games, if you have a whole bunch of cheaper video games that you're like, I don't really want to try to make $7 to $8 or maybe 10 if the right person really wants this game. But you could lot up. They don't even actually need to be like all the same type of video games. You could even sneak in a sports game that nobody wants into a bundle to get rid of it. But you might get $5 a piece across the board, right? But still, if you can find at a thrift store at a yard sale if you're paying $1 a game, or it really depends. Like I've been to yard sales where people want $5 a game. I've been to yard sales where people want $10 a game. I've been to yard sales where they're $1 a piece, take all you want, or take them all for like take this giant box of stuff for $50 and there's like 2 consoles sitting in there and you're like you almost feel guilty taking it. Um, but when you do buy stuff like that, there's going to be plenty of opportunity to have stuff that maybe isn't super valuable. And that's one of the things, like I said, you can sort of create better sales sometimes by lotting up smaller items that maybe would not sell so good by themselves.
100%. Yeah, I do that all the time with Wii's. We've talked about this before. I've sold something like, I don't even remember what the number is now. It's probably like 30 Wii's in the last year, year and a half or something like that. And I will buy every single Wii game I see if it's $5 or less. I don't care what it is. It could be the crappiest, most shovelware piece of crap kids game there is. But the thing about it is, even if it cost me $5 for that game, that is probably even only worth $3, it's going to help move a console. So if I can buy Wii's typically for, $20, maybe $30 at most is what I'm usually finding them for. And then I'm bundling it up and making like a 10 game bundle, like fun for the whole family. And I'm selling that bundle for 125, 150 bucks. Like, I don't care if I've broken even or lost a couple dollars on each of those games. I've still made a good chunk of money. My maybe $50 investment is now a $150 sale. So yeah, you're right. You find value or you create value in things that maybe wouldn't necessarily be worth picking up if it was just for that item itself.
Yeah. I know recently, I think I just had took a bunch of the sealed media that I had. So like, a spool of 25 burnable DVDs. And I just like made lots of a bunch of them. I think I sold one just the other day for like 6 of them for, I think it was around $50. Well, I know I paid about roughly a $1.50 a spindle. Yeah, I could wait and get the $24 or whatever each one plus shipping, but they're like, it's few and far between who wants that type of thing. But bundling a bunch of them together, I'm still into it, like way less than $10, and I'm going to make $45 to $50 right there.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a lot of things you can do when you're not overthinking. When you're not overthinking the process and trying to extract every last penny. You do really create a lot of opportunities for yourself. To go along with that, because we talked about the algorithm earlier and how negative feedback can, impact the algorithm in our non-scientific anecdotal experience. I think another way that you can very clearly positively impact the algorithm, which is definitely going to have a positive impact on sales, is by listing every day. And I know we've talked about this before, and it seems like a no-brainer. But maybe for newer sellers who don't have a lot of inventory, maybe listing every day seems really daunting. Like, how do I list an item every single day when I only have, maybe 10, 15, 20 items or something like that? And so maybe right up front, right away, maybe this doesn't apply to people who really only have a handful of listings or so. But I would say once you get up to probably like 50 to 100 listings, somewhere in that range, where your items, some of your items at least are 30 days old, 60 days old, whatever. Listing every day, even if it's just one new item, or ending an older listing, maybe your 3 oldest listings or something like that, and then selling similar, because it really does just breathe new life into those listings. It definitely impacts the algorithm. eBay's AI is going to be like, oh, this guy's really active. Like, let's go ahead and push this. A lot of new activity here. That actually might be my number one, to be honest. Can I change answers? Because I think it's important to be active and just constantly show the machines that you're working with them. You're trying to earn them some money, and it definitely helps. I notice when I'm listing every day, and I did this experiment last year, I listed every single day from June 1st right up until the end of November. And then I took December off because I built up a really large inventory, wanted to take some time, personal time, enjoy the holidays, not list as much. And my sales tanked. absolutely tanked. Even though it was Q4, even though it was Christmas time, people were, buying stuff. It was extremely, extremely noticeable. And then in the new year, when I started listening again, it took about 2 more weeks to get the momentum back. But all of a sudden, it's bam, store's right back where it was. And I mean, it's undeniable at this point, as far as I'm concerned, like at least in my experience.
That's going to be a wrap on today's episode. If you guys want to give us a follow over on Spotify, you can listen to this or even watch it on Spotify, actually. Or maybe you are listening to this on Spotify. And in that case, you could follow us over on YouTube for more content just like this. If you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing for more content, and we will see you soon.